Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Optimi webinar, the very first one of the year. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes before we get started for people to still have some time to join us. But in the meantime, for those who are already there, feel free to use the chat section on the bottom right to first tell us if you hear us properly, if you hear me properly, but also like to share anything you want to share with us today, from your internal weather to your where you're coming from, where you're joining us from, and also maybe what are your expectations from today's webinar. It will be super cool to interact with you during this webinar. Yes, so okay, perfect. Hey Becca, it's nice to have you with us. Hi Suzanne. So as you know, today we are going to discuss impact reporting. So what does it mean to do impact reporting? What is it so important, and how to actually do it, I would say, properly or in an engaging way? We are very pleased to cover this topic because just taking into account the number of people that shown interest for today's webinar, we had more than 130 registration from all over the globe, mainly Canada, but also the US and some countries in Europe. It does show the importance of such a topic, and we are very happy and proud to be able to kick off to kickstart the year with covering such topic with I would say a very very well-renowned expert of the field, Stephanie Robertson from LBG Canada, that has been active in this field for I think I believe more than 20 years. So it's a very big pleasure to have her on stage with us today. And my colleague Aaron from Optimi, that has been also active at Optimi for more than 5 years, will be leading this discussion, very, I would say, not informal, but friendly and engaging. We will make sure that it's interacting for you, and that you feel comfortable to engage and share your views, your experience, and so on. In this regard, we will have two short polls that we will post during the webinar. More info to come in this regard. And yeah, before I think I give the floor to Aaron to continue this session, maybe just some housekeeping things. You see that you have different sections. So the chat section where we can interact, comment, share views, and so on. But also the question section to maybe keep a track on how to make sure we respond to what you have in mind. And once it will be the right timing, we will we will launch the polls in the poll section. I think I covered everything. The only thing is that as we are quite a few today, we won't be able to give you the floor to speech out loud. But we unfortunately we'll have to interact in the in a written way. But yeah, we will make sure it's super engaging. I think I've covered everything, and I give the floor to Aaron.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucy. My name is Aaron. I have the great privilege of speaking with and working directly with organizations and customers across North America. Today, we're excited to have a conversation about reporting. And in speaking to our customers, one of the common themes is that no matter the size of your team or giving, reporting is becoming a focal point for both our customers and their stakeholders. So actually last June, we held another webinar in partnership with True Impact and Engage for Good, and that was titled 5 Key Steps to Measure Corporate Social Impact. In some ways, today's webinar is a continuation of the topic, but today we're going a layer deeper and we'll keep this, as Lucy mentioned, engaging and conversational. For this, again, we're honored to have Stephanie here, not only as one of the industry experts really in North America or the world, but she's also one of the key focus areas of her and her team just happens to be reporting. So Stephanie, thanks for taking the time today. Can you share a bit about your experience and any highlights on how you've helped organizations with impact reporting?
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I should also just acknowledge that I am, as you are, Aaron, I know that we're doing this together, grateful to be hosted on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Shinabag, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, which is now known to the world as Toronto and the home to many, many First Nations people, which we are very privileged to engage with. This slide is a little bit about the LBG Canada program, and I'm hoping actually we can even put the slides away because this is really more conversational, I suppose, than a slide deck that I'm going to be sharing. But my company, Simpact Strategy Group, the word Simpact comes from social and impact blend. Everything that we do is focused on demonstrating the value of investment in community and society. So sometimes we work with corporate community investment teams who are seeking to demonstrate the value of their strategies and their impact as a result in community. Sometimes we work with the exact same teams to help them demonstrate their value to the business. I'm also extremely and deeply involved in something called the Social Value Movement, which is an international discussion, an international platform to actually demonstrate the value of change that results from when you impact community. So everything that we do is really focused on impact in some shape or form. But what I'm really interested the most is the process that leads to producing good information. So a lot of my companies that I work with amazing technology providers such as Optimi and others. They work with Benevity, they work with Sponsorium. My focus is really about how do you take that data that your amazing technology provider is enabling you to gather and use it to inform your process. And that's really, really where Simpact and the LBG Canada's work in impact reporting really begins, from that jumping off point.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stephanie. So I think a question to maybe start with is, reporting as a topic is a very broad term. So yeah, in specific to this industry and maybe this audience here, or specific to you, what does reporting mean to you and the Simpact team?
Mm-hmm. So I love the question that you asked because I think the lack of definition causes barriers to get the work done and certainly makes the work harder. So because, to your point, reporting has so many different definitions, one of the things that we really encourage people to be clear on is who they're actually reporting to. Because today, as purpose, as social sustainability reporting, as ESG reporting and discussions really proliferate all over the world, the fact is you might choose to report to your external community partners differently than you might choose to work to your senior leadership and report to your senior leadership internally, or to your investors who are actually seeking information about the S in your ESG performance. And so, to me, reporting actually can mean different things to different organizations in different moments. And so the first thing that we really need to do is define who is our audience, or who are our audiences, because often you're reporting to more than one, and to really think about the fact that what you might tell those audiences might not always be the same, or it might be presented differently, even though it is, researching or accessing the same data point. So, one of the things which you showed me in our preparation for this discussion was one of your clients' websites that actually invites people to apply for funding, but also to apply for volunteers when they need volunteer work to be done. I actually had never seen that before. I thought it was brilliant to put it all on the same page. But one data point to the community would be the number of volunteer hours that you enabled across your employee base on their behalf. A different metric to a different audience, but about the same thing, is your percentage of employees that choose to engage. And that percentage of employees is a really key HR indicator, which you want to move to the front when you're talking about resource allocation, when you're talking about do I do working hours and non-working hours programming, or should I make a tweak in my strategy that might result in some sort of resource allocation. So that's just an example, sort of an easy example to get your head around, one's heads around, I suppose, how the data might be very important for different audiences. Same data, use it differently to achieve your goals and objectives. Yeah.
I love the mention about resource allocation. I think it's an awesome topic for this year, not for today, but maybe for another time. You mentioned, the metrics and KPIs, they might differ between business impact and community impact. Are there any examples that you think, are there any examples of metrics that might tie to both?
Well, I think it's not necessary. Percentage of employees engaged is one example that might apply to both. I think, one of the things that I would find myself involved in is conversations that help to illustrate the value of smaller transactions that often come through a business unit when the company is really, really close to its the people in its community, its stakeholders. So oil and gas, mining, pipelines, retail outlets and banks, but where the community is actually coming to the front, to the proverbial coal face and asking for support. And sometimes the amount is not that large in the grand scheme of things. So you look at, RBC, for example, that's one of the companies that we work with. It invests, I'm going to make up a number, but in the area of like $140 million a year. There's a proportion of that is based on requests from that come through branches. And the most important indicator in those instances is actually not the amount of money that's given. It's the number of times that the branch has been able to say yes, right? It's the amount of requests that are coming to the branch or coming to the local community representative of a pipeline company or a mining company. It's how many times has community investment been given the opportunity to partner at the front of the coalface? Like that is a really, really important data point that actually can help senior leaders understand the kind of frequency of request that's being presented to employees that are very, very front and center and engaging with the community directly. So that's just one example of a metric, I would suppose. Yeah.
Okay. We have so many examples, I think, at Optimi, and we do share some similar customers as well. But I'm curious if you think that there are any, regardless of if it's oil and gas, banking, financial services, or retail, are there any common metrics or KPIs that you think are generally important to report on? And if some of the folks in the audience today here aren't reporting on these, what would you say some of the top or best KPIs would be?
So I think when we're talking about community impact, and let's just focus there for a minute, I think one of the reasons why companies are struggling to really get traction with their reporting exercises, and when I say traction, I think unfortunately in the world, there is a generalized distrust of corporate reporting. So rightly or wrongly, there is just this distrust. And so when companies do their best to actually put real information out in front of their stakeholders, there is just a natural barrier of trust that needs to be overcome. And so one of the challenges with impact reporting is that companies sometimes don't necessarily share what they know about the community partner and their needs. They're just jumping right to the impact numbers. And I think what ends up happening is that the community reads the impact report and says, well, that's all well and good that you say that you impacted 180,000 people, but like, you're big, you should have done more, you should have given more. Like, it's not resulting in the kind of response that many companies are seeking. And frankly, many companies deserve, because they're doing amazing things in community. And so there's a couple of things that I really try to get reporters, community investment teams to think about when they're mapping out what their reporting journey is going to look like. And so one of them is, when they go through the decision-making process, companies have strategies in place. And, one of the things which I noticed about the True Impact webinar was that it was a really good reminder that you got to have your strategy in place before you really think about measurement. If your strategy is not clear, then it's too soon. So let's just assume for this conversation right now that we're talking about a company that has a very clear strategy in place, and both of us work with a lot of those companies. One of the things that I notice is that there's a complete disconnect between the decision-making process, which is typically very thoughtful, detailed, has decision-making criteria associated with it. The company goes through the process, the team goes through this process. They make a decision, they decide, they invest. And then all of the information that they use to make that decision is then left at the decision-making stage and is not often come back to at all. So what ends up happening is that the measurement process, which then leads to the reporting process, is like it's a whole fresh exercise, right? And what I would encourage companies to really think of, and actually we might even encourage people to go and take a look at some of these things in their own context after this conversation is done. I'd be really interested to see what they think. But the language that they're using in their decision-making and criteria is different than in their applications. And their applications language is then different again from the words that they're using in their reporting. And the problem is that if you have a strategy, everything that you're doing to enable that strategy, all of the steps should be in the same language. You should be using the same verbs. You should be using the same, outcome words. You could be asking people about metrics that you probably were discussing in your decision-making process. And so, actually one of the secrets, as we sort of alluded to in the marketing of this webinar, is that the reporting process actually begins at the decision-making process. And all of the steps that lead from decision to implementation or investment to information gathering and then reporting, it's actually a book with with 4 chapters or 5 chapters. And we need to go through this process. We need to set it up. When that's done, the impact reporting work is actually done almost from the time of decision. And, we use this phrase in the impact or in the LBG Canada world, and that is every corporate community investment team should, and I apologize for using that verb, but I do believe it very strongly, every community investment team should be able to turn around in any given day, any given month of the fiscal year, and say, this is the impact that we have invested in having. So this is the investment, this is the impact intention that we have invested in. And the systems that are there to take decision, to investment, to information gathering, to reporting, should enable a company to report on its impact intention at any moment in time. And if you can do that, then actually your reporting is just demonstrating that your strategic vision, which led to your investment in the first place, was clear. And it does take a while to set that up. I mean, we've been working with one company in Canada for over a year because they have a huge portfolio. But the fact is that kind of investment is fundamentally worth it if reporting to key audiences is one of your goals and objectives. Engaging reporting with key audiences, it can be done. You need to streamline your process from beginning to end. And oftentimes community investment teams are working so hard that they don't necessarily have the opportunity to set that up for themselves. When they do, it's a game changer. Sorry, it's one of my favorite topics, Aaron. So you just gave me this platform. I thank you for the opening. Yeah.
No, I was going to say there's so much to actually unpack in that statement. I think it's a great opportunity, and maybe now we can jump to a poll. We prepared a couple of polls in advance here. So Lucy or the Optimize team, if you can fire up, I think one of the polls as well. Perfect. So based on that description, Stephanie, we have a poll that says, how satisfied are you, the poll to the audience, how satisfied are you folks currently with your ability to report on impact? And so we should start seeing some of the replies soon.
Listen, I think the fourth in that list is, I'm a rock star, you should get me on your next webinar. So I'm really hoping that we've got a couple of those. I wouldn't be surprised if that was in fact the case. So
I look forward to that one as well.
So while people are just answering the poll, we can come back to that in a second. I think the other thing which I'd really like to share is that oftentimes the community investment team is not differentiating between an investment that they're making that will impact a person right away and an investment that they're making to build organizational capacity. And I'll just give you the example of financial literacy. A number of the banks, for example, are huge investors, and for good reason, in financial literacy education for people. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was asked this question about impact reporting by one of the banks. And you could actually see there was one significant chunk of money that was being directed towards supporting programming that was already on the ground. And the funding that was being provided would literally go as soon as it was received to enabling more people to get the training, right? But there was a second and a third very significant tranches of investment. One of them was about translating the curriculum into another language, and it would be a language that would be appropriate for a newcomer to engage more easily in the training, right? And the second was something about technology. I can't remember, but the technology was going to enable people that couldn't physically get to the training to be able to participate in the training online. And the point is, all three of those investments were about financial literacy, but the way that you would think about impact and the way that you would report on impact actually would be very different. The first investment, you could say, hey, we doubled their budget and that enabled them to double their people trained. So there's and hopefully with a deep relationship with a community partner, you would also be given information about what the people were learning in that course. And I'm 100% sure that would have been the case. But what is missing is that it's a really, really interesting story to tell the world that you helped translate a proven curriculum so that it was now available to thousands of newcomers who do not speak English as a first language. That is a great impact story. And usually the translation takes time. So that type of investment, it's entirely possible that the people impact won't happen until the next fiscal year, because they've got to go through the process of translation, or they have to go through the process of embedding the technology in the organization. And where the struggle is that oftentimes we're still using the same metrics to tell very different stories. One grouping of metrics is about impact on people, and another grouping of metrics is really about building organizational capacity amongst amazing organizations that will then enable those organizations to do more in the future. And that's another secret, I would say, is that I think people really are missing an opportunity to tell amazing stories about what they're doing to enable organizations to do more. And I think particularly in this environment, in economies where support for the charitable sector is shrinking, it's shrinking in every country around the world, that capacity building is very important. And so let's talk about that. So that's another piece that I would certainly add to a puzzle if anyone was really looking to take their impact reporting goals and objectives further.
Yeah, actually, more on that in a second. Really interesting results from the poll is that 2/3 of the group in our audience here are saying that we are making some progress, but slow and steady wins the race. And so there's progress and there's growth. 1/3 have actually shared that they haven't started yet, really at the starting line and really just going. For the group, maybe the 2/3, you mentioned impact stories. One of the common phrases I hear from many of our customers is storytelling the impact, similar to financial wellness, is really important. So now that we have for example, if they are collecting the data, how do you recommend organizations start better storytelling the impact that the programs are making if they haven't already?
Well, I think it comes to the strategy, and it actually comes back to my first point. You go through this process of choosing partners that you want to work with, right? And so my question is, why are you choosing those partners? What is it about their work? What is it about their leadership style? What is it about their brand? What is it about their reputation for their work in the community? Those things lead to criteria that make you choose them. And so your impact story is just proof that you made a good decision, right? And so what I would do for anyone that was just starting out is I would say, okay, look at one of the partners that you're the proudest of and look at the reasons why you're proud, why you say you want to keep investing with them in the community. And that's your impact story. Choose one of those things and tell people about that characteristic which led you to say yes in the first place. And the thing which I notice is that companies that have strategies, and when those strategies are clear, they invest in I'm going to use the word focus areas. They've got focus areas. They've got thematic focus areas, and they've got demographic focus areas or tendencies. And so every single impact story is not a one-off. It's part of a strategy. And normally there's multiple investments that sit in a bucket that are reasonably similar. And actually, to that end, one of the questions that companies should be, and probably are, but maybe not using, is asking the community partner, what are they measuring? Because the community partners typically are really good at what they do, and they have measurement in place. Maybe they need more resources to do more. Sure, that's always a possibility. But typically, you've got people in these organizations who are really, really good at what they do. And so the company in the decision-making process needs to be asking them, what are you measuring? Like, how do you know that you're achieving your goals and objectives? And with that information, you can then start seeing information that's available to you as a reporting company to say, hey, this is what we're contributing to. And I remember I went through this exercise for an amazing company a couple of years ago, one full of people that I admire. And I'm always fascinated by how brilliant people who are doing amazing work still struggle with reporting, because I'm like, you guys have got the world, on a string. Why is it so difficult to tell that story? And, what I did for this company was I went to their community partners within a strategic area of focus. And I asked them to tell me in their own words what they were measuring and what data points they were keeping their eyes on so that they knew they were actually achieving the results that they had committed to. Super interesting. They all gave me an answer in their own words, but the fact is they were all pretty much measuring the same things. Like, they were within a range. So let's just pretend they were each measuring 7 things. 4 or 5 out of those 7 things were common to all of the organizations, and some of the things around the edges were unique. The company has the opportunity to say, do I need to report on all 7 things? Probably not. I don't have the resources to tell that much of a story. So I'm going to take the information that you have in common, and that's going to be my story. And I'm going to supplement it over time with the other things. And what ends up happening is that this company could send their community partners 1 page with about 6 or 7 questions that said, this is what you told me. How are you doing? Everyone can absorb 1 page of information if it's laid out well, reduce the reporting impact on the community partner, gave the community investment team way better information and an amount of information they could actually do something with in a reasonable period of time to meet their reporting requirements. So it's all achievable. We just have to be able to simplify it down so that's, why am I making the decision, and integrate that strategy and that criteria through all of your processes, simplify, compile, and present it to the audience that you're seeking to engage with.
Yeah, everything you just mentioned, I think it really resonates with what we hear from our customer base, the folks in the industry, probably many in this audience as well. So actually wanted to throw up, I think our second poll is, I think everyone here would agree what Stephanie's sharing is, it's not even aspirational. It's we all believe that it's necessary. And thank you for sharing such practical tips as well. But would love to get a sense of, from the audience, what's hindering you from actually operationalizing that? Because we all know it's important. We all know impact reporting is important, storytelling is important, but what's preventing you folks from really doing that today? So we have a poll up. Please feel free to answer as well. Perfect.
So, Aaron, there's a question in the chat. Can we just engage with that for a minute? Do you mind?
Not at all. Please go ahead.
So the question is, we find it difficult to receive engagement from our followers. So I'm just wondering, Johnny, if you could just give us a little bit more information. So do you mean your social media followers, and is that the language that you're trying to get them? Are you trying to get your social media followers to respond to the information that you're putting out online? Because my question to you is, okay, so social blogs, newsletters, etc. So I think it really comes back to who is your audience. Because the way that you might frankly engage with your program donors would be very different than how you might choose to engage with your social media followers, because the purpose of the communication is very different. your donors are the ones that you want to continue to engage over time. And so I would imagine that they might be interested in sort of much more practical information, whereas the social media is really about building your brand and trying to bring attention to your work. And so I think it's entirely possible that those two audiences are very different and they would want different types of information about your program. Sorry, something crossed my mind that I wanted to, and then it flitted across and it left me. I'll come back to that in a second. But I'll give you an example. When I think about the kind of insight that a company would get during the decision-making process, the community partner would be telling you, do you need the funding, or will the investment go towards supporting existing programming, for example, enabling the organization to do something completely new that they know that their clients need, but they don't have the resources to do? It could be around thought leadership, could be around performance measurement, could be around engaging their team in skill sets, or even doing some resiliency programming. Or what I'm speaking to is that in the work that we do, generally speaking, there's basically 6 areas of activities that all organizations fall into. So all organizational requests fall into. The request is either to support existing programming, do something new that they really know that their clients need. Sometimes it's about thought leadership and research. Could be about performance measurement and evaluation, could be about raising awareness, like building organizational profile, of services, fundraising, or it might be around what we call strengthening teams. I would venture to guess that your social media audience might be really interested to know, like this company that I've been working with for over a year, 35% of all of the money that they've invested in community, and it's significant, the amount of money that they've invested, has gone to enable organizations that are providing a vital human service to keep the lights on. So that 35% of their significant portfolio has gone towards enabling people to continue to get services that they already know they need. There's another 16 or 17% of their significant portfolio, and again, it's in the tens and tens of millions of dollars, that's gone towards enabling community partners to do something new. So they've said, we see this need, and we need investment to help us go out and do something different. Your social media followers would be interested in that type of insight, I believe, because it shows there's a real knowledge of what's actually happening in the community as the either investor or as the organization that's actually doing the work. And I kind of believe that, again, I'm sounding like a bit repetitive, and I apologize, but when we go through this decision-making process, there is a conscious decision at that point to invest in helping an organization to keep the lights on. And that is a good impact story. There's a conscious decision to invest in enabling innovation. That is a good impact story. There's a conscious decision to invest in strengthening the skills or the resiliency of the people on the front lines doing the work. That's a great impact story. And so what we want to do is we want to take that knowledge that we're applying to this thoughtful discussion where we've engaged with the community partner and we've made a decision, and that's the story that we want to bring forward, or some of them. Anyway, yeah. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think that was Johnny, and we will have a bit of time for Q&A. Just a few, I think we have 5 minutes left in the session, in this webinar for today, but would love for a response in terms of the poll. So almost unanimously, It's time, costs, resource management, which we touched on a bit earlier today. So it seems like the audience really wants to and loves to tell the impact story, and they know that's a priority. What are any recommendations on if we have a time, cost, and resource management constraints and just a system for data collection? How would you recommend people start if it's already a challenge?
Well, so I will say that so the LBG work that we do is based on the LBG model. LBG model I worked with in the UK long time ago, 20 years ago, brought it back to Canada, which is how LBG Canada was launched. The LBG model has been rebranded to B4SI, which is Business for Social Innovation. So all that information you can find links to on our website, or it's out there in the ether. But it's one of the concepts in the work that we do is about depth of impact. So, we talk, back to your initial question, Aaron, about, what is reporting? Is all reporting alike? Well, one of the big problems that we have is that people talk about impact as though it's all the same, right? And actually, there's a concept that I love called depth of impact. And you actually want to measure impact at 3 different depths. And I'm just going to summarize them really quickly. The first is connect. The second is improve. And the third is transform. And when I look at a lot of the other areas where people might go for guidance on how to report on impact, the emphasis is on transformation, as though that's the only valuable impact that you can contribute to. And yet, when you really sit back and look at what's inside company portfolios, you need to connect with somebody in order to be given the opportunity to help them do something, which is the improvement. And sometimes that activity that you're funding leads to transformation. But a lot of times that transformation requires multi-year investment. And so unless you're actually aware that you need to be in it for the long term, when you go to report on impact as though you've been part of transformation for the whole journey, it doesn't ring true to your audiences, which is why people sit back and they say, you haven't been around that long. How on earth did you really contribute to all of that, right? And so again, first thing that people should do when they're mapping out their impact journey is all of my transactions. Am I connecting with people? Am I giving them information? Am I opening a window? Am I letting them know, hey, women's heart health is a really big health issue? That's an example of connect. Heart and Stroke Canada needs people, insurance companies need people to understand that women's heart health is a big deal. That's all I'm doing is I'm doing a public awareness campaign. That's connect. If I'm lucky, that same community partner will let me participate as they work with women who are at risk to learn how to cook, to eat more healthily, and therefore to address some of the risks that might affect their health over time. That's improve. Transformation will be those risks have disappeared. Chances are that transformation is not going to happen in a 3-month program. It's going to be longer term. So my top 2 things would be really look and be proud of the depth of impact that each of your transactional investments, and I don't mean transactional in terms of short term, I mean, look at your whole portfolio. That's what we do on an annual basis. We audit thousands and thousands of lines of data. And one of the things we look at is connect, improve, transform, because it informs your impact story. And the other thing that we look at is this investment going to go and impact a person today, which then would lead to connect, improve, transform, or is it about organizational capacity building? And there is a lot of amazing impact story to be told about both sides of that coin. I mean, I look at this one company that we've talked about, they've invested, 5% of everything they've invested is to enable their community partners to access new technology. That's a great impact story. I mean, I can tell you what kind of technology, I can go down into more detail, but that's a lot. There's a lot of really interesting stories to tell. And the reason that matters is that all of a sudden you're engaging with audiences with confidence, actually, that you really know the story that you're telling. You know how the impact was created. And that will come across as more authentic to your audiences, more meaningful to the community partners that you're representing. And yeah, but I think those are the two steps which I think are essential to get started. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. And I think just to add to that, who we are at Optimi, we're a technology platform, not necessarily a great fit for everyone. For example, if you have 5 or 10 or maybe a dozen grants, telling that impact story, gathering that data might be available in Excel and email, connecting with the partners, but dozens, hundreds, thousands of grants, for example, much more difficult. And Optimi is really built for this, built for data reporting and automation. So with the system, instead of clicks, using clicks and code, using clicks instead of code, you can capture all of the data in an automated way to do exactly what you're referring to, Stephanie, asking great questions, building the story, sharing that with stakeholders as well. And so just,
The only thing I would really caution, though, is there is no question that the technology will make a huge difference, but it's not just about asking the right question. It's actually about, a strategic plan for the flow of information as it moves through your technology. And that is, there's a degree of depth and connection strategy that's required that I think is very achievable, but I don't think it should be underestimated in terms of its importance.
Yeah, and that's why I think we're exactly having a session like this today. Is Optimi is a technology platform, but the experience and the insight really comes from the organization or from experts like yourself. So really appreciate the sharing today. I love this topic personally. I think we can tell that you do as well, and I think we both collaborate well on reporting. We are actually a few minutes over time. Wanted to give an opportunity for again, for everyone in the audience, if you do have to leave, really thank you for really attending today, engaging with the polls and the questions. We will have a few extra minutes for Q&A because I want to make sure we get to the couple of questions we have. And if you do, if you're able to, please feel free to stay, upvote other questions, or add your own questions as well. But let's spend a little bit of time in Q&A because I think many people want to pick your brain, Stephanie. So Lucy, Stephanie, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephanie and Aaron. So we have 2 questions in the chat section. I think you see it. So Stephanie, I don't know which one you want to start with first, and the audience see them as well.
So I think we spoke about Johnny's already. So I think there's just the second one, which is from Nadia. Is that right? I actually am not 100% sure that I understand the question fully. So I apologize if I don't get it right, but I'm going to do my best. It says, talking really about the long-term impact of our funding from other sources of influence and defining exactly how impact should be defined. You fund research. So I think the story around the impact of research is what the intention of that research is. I think part of the challenge is that research happens over a period of time that might make it very difficult to say our research invested resulted in 10 more people having access to this treatment. So I think that what we want to do from an impact perspective is talk about why the funding is needed and what the scope of the need is. And in that statement or that paragraph, you can actually speak to what you hope might happen as a result of the research being done. But I think companies trip up or find themselves coming across as less than authentic when there's an attempt to assign impact to research that's either ongoing or is so large in magnitude that it's very difficult to assign one company's contribution to that over and above recognizing the need and the importance of the work. So I'm not 100% sure if that answered your question, but that's my take on how I interpret it anyway. Hopefully that's somewhat helpful.
So Nadia is like, oh yeah, okay. Very useful. Thank you. Appreciate it, Nadia. I don't know if anyone else got any other questions that would like to be covered. Just like wait a couple of minutes, and if not, I think it would be the right timing to wrap it up.
Yeah, I actually see a question from Julie. If you're still here, I think the question is directed at Stephanie. Do you have any resources, example on your website, that describe impact stories and the notion of depth of impact?
Sorry, Lucy.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I understood that you said you already covered it. Like, my bad.
No, I didn't cover that one yet. There's a high level, there's a PowerPoint on our website that actually talks a little bit about it, and it has some illustrations. That could be one starting point. And then, I mean, I could look, you could certainly look at the LBG manual. I could email that to you, or Kathleen could email that to you. But there's, I think the slide deck on our website, it's short, it's like 10 slides, but 2 of them are about depth of impact. And certainly that's a starting point. It's actually a phenomenal concept, which of course I can say because I didn't invent it. So someone else was brilliant enough to bring that concept to the world. I think it's incredibly useful to organize your thinking. And it also helps to identify metrics that would be associated with that. And those slides that I'm referring to illustrate that.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. And if you agree, we can like include all relevant links in the following up email that we will be preparing with the webinar replay and like insightful link to kind of like continue the discussion and the thinking about today's topics. So we will prepare it and you will receive it like I believe on Monday or Tuesday maximum. So that you know. Yeah. I see that Julie is still tapping something. Many thanks, Stefan. You're very welcome, everyone. It was a pleasure to have us with us today. It was a pleasure to hear all this like really interesting insight, experiences, and best practices. I hope it's the beginning of a continuous journey toward like thinking about impact reporting with Stephanie, obviously. And I think that's it for me. Like, thank you, everyone. And Aaron and Stephanie, I let you wrap up and say your last wording.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Also should say that I actually forgot to plug in my laptop. So this is perfectly timed because I'm going to disappear literally in about 30 seconds. So, but yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite things. And yeah, I'm a big fan of your technology. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. See you soon, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.